I'm Joey.T.Cartoon.P and you're watching the Cartoon Palooza. For today's review, we're going to be going back in time. And when I say back, we're going way back. Back when Disney was at their worst. Close. There we go. It's easy to think when Disney is at their prime, especially when kicking off the golden age of animation, having a resurgence in the early 90s, to even today with their stride in recent hits. However, to every peak, there's a downhill slope, and occasionally Disney has had their share of bombs with an odd pattern. However, most historians noted that the period when Disney animation had its worst was after the death of Walt Disney. A lot of the original animators were ready to hang their gloves, leaving a fresh crew of filmmakers who had little to no direction to go. The Xerox process that was introduced with 101 Dalmatians would make the films look scratchy and unfinished. There was also when the studio became notorious for recycling animation. I know people make jokes about Hanna-Barbera recycling a lot of animation, but the thing is, that was done for television. This is done for theaters. So knowing that this was a time when Disney was not doing too hot, and this being a movie from that period, it's probably gonna be hard to watch. That isn't the case. Instead, I want to talk about a movie that could have been a whole lot worse given the time it came out, but ends up being pretty good. That film being Disney's Robin Hood. Originally conceived as a film about another English folk character named Renard, they ended up combining it with the legend of Robin Hood. So instead of having a trickster fox out with a wolf for an hour and a half, we have a trickster fox out with a wolf for an hour and a half. And name him Robin Hood. We have plenty of other road bumps when it comes to this film, like how its concept designer was mostly disappointed with the final results, mostly changing the roles of certain characters to their stereotypical animals. Let's see, a villainous wolf, a cowardly lion, a witty fox. Oh, Maron, the level of originality is off the charts! We also have a small animator named Don Bluth call it quits after this film, bringing with him other animators that made their own studio. They made little movies you may have heard of, and others you're gonna try to forget. So with such a messy production and reputation, what ends up working about this film? Well, a number of things. Our movie focuses on the tale of Robin Hood told through a rooster with the voice of Roger Miller, which seems like an odd choice considering he sings country and doesn't use an English accent since, you know, European middle-aged folktales. Even then, a lot of the characters in this version speak as if they're American, despite the country not having been discovered in a couple hundred years. In short, it makes Robin Hood Men in Tights seem more faithful in their depiction of its character's ethnicity.
Unlike some other Robin Hoods, I can speak with an English accent.
Despite that, our hero Robin Hood does what you'd expect. He's an excellent archer, taking from the rich, giving to the needy.
But I'm not greedy.
Regardless, this version of Robin Hood isn't bad since he's very likable and does have a personality. He's charismatic and sure of himself, but doesn't make himself invincible. There are times when he finds himself in a bind, but sheer luck is what mostly gets him out of trouble. I like how in the opening after the credits, they show you through a montage where he and Little John do what they do best, both setting the tone of the film and giving us a quick understanding of their characters.
Yeah? Take a look at your hat. That's not a candle on a cake.
By the way, that's Phil Harris reprising his role as Baloo since, let's face it, Little John in this film is the same character right down to the voice, design, and mannerisms. Both he and Robin Hood defend the folk of Nottingham from the evil, but mostly laughable Prince John and his confident hiss.
Mother always did like Richard best.
After seeing this character, it would be pretty hard to see him as a king. He has a selfish sheriff who goes around collecting taxes in the crummiest and despicable ways you can imagine. He steals from the church and abuses the handicapped just so he can do his job. What a dick! The movie doesn't come without flaws, one of them being the obvious budget the filmmakers had to work with. When the film opens, they roll the credits with animation you see later in the film on top of a blank background. Kinda hard to believe that this studio is responsible for setting the standard of animation as we know it, have a hard time creating a better opening than this. They do use a lot of animation from previous Disney films as reference. You can pretty much make a drinking game to all the times there are scenes directly copied from other Disney films. Like most Disney films, you do have the kid characters that were obviously made to look cute and say cute things. The kids in this film are not really memorable or endearing. You've got this stick in the mud that's played by a turtle, a female character you only know is a girl because she's wearing a bow, and the worst one, the baby with the doll that follows around the crowd going, "Wait for me, wait for me!" The one kid character that's not really annoying is the main one, Skippy. Again, Disney's going for that middle-age authenticity. He was given closest to a completed arc that starts with Robin giving him one of his hats, following around the other main characters, and eventually getting a chance to help our hero get out of a scrap. The other characters are pretty good as well, especially Lady Cluck, whose scene at the county fair reminds me of every football game I've ever watched. For every hero, you gotta have an equal as their villain, and while the villains here are pretty goofy, they are very memorable. The villain is so silly, they practically set the bar on how silly they can get. However, what I found funny by revisiting this film is that despite being a goofy character, Prince John isn't incompetent. You have to remember how he got the crown, and they set the record straight that it was his scheme to have his brothers sent to fight the Crusades. He may be a thumb-sucking mama's boy, but despite everybody getting fooled by Robin's disguises, he was the only one to actually figure out he was a stork/archer. Once everybody screwed him over in song and dance, he still managed to double the taxes and send everybody to prison. It was he who schemed getting Robin Hood captured by using Friar Tuck for bait. If that wasn't enough, the movie had an alternate ending where John managed to catch up with a wounded Robin Hood and have a chance to finish him off. So we all may laugh at his over-the-top brogue, but what makes John somewhat endearing as a classic Disney villain is that he's not 100% a fool. Robin Hood is an iconic character. Either you see a guy carrying a bow and arrow or wearing a green cap, you identify him as Robin Hood, or a character that reminds you of Robin Hood. His tale is known, and it's hard to believe that Disney managed to create the version we think of, or at least for my generation. I have a hard time believing kids today watch the Errol Flynn movies due to its age. With all the live-action movies Disney's making, I would imagine Robin Hood working. Since the characters are more human than animal, it would be a small change that wouldn't make the transition to live-action not hard to notice. Even other movies have taken an influence to this film. For the movie Fantastic Mr. Fox, they used one of the songs from its soundtrack, which wouldn't be hard to believe since both films feature a laid-back tone and some decent action amid talking animals. Both include a sly fox as their protagonist, and American actors amongst a British setting. Overall, Robin Hood is far from being one of Disney's finest films, but what it does well is make it worth checking out for yourself. Honestly, it's a movie that shaped my idea on the character and continues to set the standard on how I view Robin Hood. It has a laid-back tone that's low budget actually complements that tone in a strange but appealing experience. For that, it raises it from an okay to a worth it rating. So my question for today is pretty easy. What is your favorite interpretation of Robin Hood? Comment and let me know. Now I'm Joey Tedesco, and thanks for watching this review on the Cartoon Palooza.